Hey everyone, Cameron here, and I want to give some perspective on this concept. There's a really great video, and if you haven't watched it, I suggest you watch it before watching this video. You could watch it afterwards, but it's a very short video. It's like less than 3 minute video from Bernard Pullman called Embracing Self, and you can find it on YouTube. If you're watching this live, you won't have the link, but if you're watching it, I'll put it in there, either in YouTube or Facebook. I'll put the link to that video too, so you can watch that one. But the concept of embracing self, and I was having a conversation on chat with one of my friends and colleagues, and he was making this point. He was quoting that video, and it was this point of in the video, if you watch it, so I'm going to misquote it and then I'm going to explain the point. But my friend was basically saying, quoting the video, saying, when you change yourself, you can't expect the world to immediately change on the outside, like the outer world. When you're changing yourself, don't expect the outer world to immediately change. And I told him, go back and I know what he meant, so I don't think his intention was this. So I know what he meant, but it just shows the power of even one word, how powerful just one single word can be. And when you have a lot of people out there in this world who might be listening to Bernard's videos, or anything for that matter. I mean, it could be a high school calculus textbook. It could be a religious, like a Bible or something. It could be anything. Anytime you're trying to understand something that someone is saying, one of the major barrier to understanding is having a low vocabulary and what we call a low processing ability. And it can be seemingly subtle and minor. And in this case, there was one word missing in that quote, which was the word just. And if you go and you watch the video, you'll get the full quote. So don't rely on me to give you the quote. Go look for yourself. But I'll just paraphrase, but give you the essence of the point, which is, don't just work on changing your inner self and then expect the outer world to change. See, that's a very different statement. Okay, I'm going to give some more context in this video. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, but I really want to give some context to this, because if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're interested in changing the system that we live in, and I'm assuming that you may be interested in changing yourself. If you're not interested in the latter, well, you've come to the right place, because I'm probably one of the few people who's going to tell you you actually have to change yourself, and not just according to how you feel, but actually in a way where you're holding yourself accountable for changing the system. So here's the real point. Let me cut to the chase, and then I'll back it up and explain more. If you're just changing yourself and you're not changing the system, you're not changing yourself. And so to go back to this video, Embracing Self by Bernard Pullman, what he says in there is, he's making this point about embracing yourself, looking at all of your flaws, what you might call flaws, your weaknesses, all these points. And he even describes like getting into a fetal position, like hugging yourself and embracing yourself, accepting yourself, right? Because only when you really accept things as they are can you begin to change it. If you're not willing to accept this is where things are at, then you can't change it, because you're not even being honest about where things are at. And so what you'll end up doing is just blaming, being angry, and so forth. And so part of, the basis of all of this is really understanding who you are and what you've accepted, what you've allowed as yourself and as this world. And there's another point he makes in there. So to go back, he says, don't just change yourself, the inner self, and then expect the outer world to immediately change. Or I don't even know if he says the word immediately. You can double check that. But the point is, don't just change your inner self and then expect the world to change on the outside. Okay, now really look at this point, because I know lots of people in many different areas of life, but many people who are sort of in the domain of, hey, I want to make a difference in this world. I want to be a better person. I want to change things. I don't like the way things are the way things are. I'm not happy with the way the world is. I'm not happy with my life. Like, there's so many different aspects of that. But it's funny because this particular point people fall on the most, which is, okay, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to change myself. And that's good enough. Like if I do that, things will change because the outer world is a reflection of me. So therefore, if I change me, the world will change. But this audio, Embracing Self by Bernard Pullman, is a key audio. If you go and you listen to that, okay, so don't take my word for it. This is more me expressing a clarification that I can see is being missed within people. And I also highly suggest that you go listen to that audio. Of course, if you're not using TechnoTutor, you're not going to process it. You're going to try to fit it into your current vocabulary. And this is my whole point of why I'm explaining this, okay? So when you consider, in the video, he makes this really great point. And I think it's after he makes that other statement I've already addressed, which is he says, he's speaking for himself, but I'm going to speak for myself as if it's him speaking it, right? And he says, I embrace myself. I take responsibility for everything in this world. So then when I'm changing myself, I'm changing the world. When I'm changing the world, I'm changing myself. And see, the mistake that people make is they say they don't realize the level at which they're creating separation within themselves, that they're thinking there's an inner separate from the outer, and then they'll tend to just stay in the inner part, which is like your mind. It's the inside, it's your thoughts, it's your feelings, it's everything that no one else can see. And then there's like your personal behaviors that you do when no one's around, kind of stuff. And that's kind of more obvious how that affects reality, because if you're sitting around watching porn all day, then there has to be someone producing the porn. So obviously you're participating in that system. So there's an outward part, or if you're sitting at home and you're eating food, someone had to make that food. You had to get money somehow. So clearly there's an outward part, but the inner part of your thoughts and feelings and emotions, it's not so obvious. How does that affect things? But there's still a lot of mysticism that people have, which is like, well, there's my inner and there's the outer. And if I change my inner, it magically changes the outer. But that's not how it works. And that audio from Bernard is a really key point to process and understand, which is, and he says it very clearly, he says, I take responsibility for everything. So when you're saying I'm embracing myself, when I say that, or if you say that you're embracing yourself, it's not just yourself with all of your weaknesses and flaws, it's all of the weaknesses and flaws in this world that you're embracing as yourself. And that can be very scary to do because you probably feel powerless to do anything about it. And so what happens is people retreat within themselves to sort of hide from the fact that they feel powerless about changing anything. And so this is a really key point. Accept the responsibility. Take responsibility. It's not about blame. It's not like, okay, I am to blame for a child in Africa not having food and then having to eat dirt cookies. Like, go look at the documentaries on YouTube. This is a real thing. So I'm to blame, so I'm just gonna be, it's like, what do you do then? You just get angry? Do you just say, well, there's nothing I can do about it? What are you supposed to do? Well, if you were gonna take responsibility, you would say, okay, why is that occurring? This particular situation, for example, with this child starving, okay? All right, well, they're in an environment where the economic system is not as developed as in maybe a different country like the one I'm in, for example. And that child doesn't have an effective education to make money in the system, because there are billionaires in any country. You go to Somalia, Ethiopia, there's a billionaire there, at least one. So, but that person has a different education than the child who's starving or being abused or whatever. So how do you take responsibility? Well, you realize, first of all, the fact that the system is creating that environment, and I'm accepting the system. Accepting in the sense of, not in the same sense as Bernard was saying of you accept everything and you accept yourself, but accepting it in the sense of I'm accepting and allowing it, and I'm not doing anything to change it. I'm just accepting it. Okay, so now you accept it from the point of, okay, I accept the fact that this is occurring. Because what is happening is, because we're not aware of it, we're allowing it to occur, we're accepting it at a very deep level, and then it's automated, and then we don't think about it, but we benefit from it, from the system, from the economic system. And then we don't do anything to change it. And then in fact, if anybody were to try and change it, we would justify it not changing, because then our position would not be secure. So the first point is to say, okay, well, I realize, I accept that this is how things are. There's an economic system, I'm benefiting from it, and other people aren't, and I'm not doing anything to change it. Okay, so then the next question is, well, how could I possibly change it? Then you just have to start looking and being honest with yourself. Okay, well, who does direct these things? Because somebody's making laws, somebody's participating in this system at a very high level, where they're making decisions about economic development and educational systems and things like that. That would be like, if I'm not personally affecting this child's life, who is making decisions that are affecting them, right? And what collective points are creating this situation? And then you start realizing, as you go further and further, like, okay, there's politics, there's economics, there's all these systems in place. So how can we change those systems? Because if we change those systems, then we could change these environments. This child could get a proper education. There could be economic opportunities for them. And so then now you start to realize your greater responsibility. Oh, I have to stand up from where I'm at in my life, which means I'm going to have to face my fears. I'm going to have to face my weaknesses that I perceive within myself that I'm accepting. I'm going to have to face my perceived limitations. I'm going to have to go outside of that. I'm going to have to stand up and do more. And is everyone going to be able to stand up in the system and like be a politician, for example? No, not everyone, but you don't need everyone. So some people may realize like, okay, I as a parent am accepting certain things as a parent, and that's allowing it to be okay for other people. So I'm going to stop accepting these things. So it may be that many people who even hear this message won't be able to stand up and become the new 1%, as we've been talking about, in direct systems. But that's okay, as long as they are realizing, okay, but that shouldn't prevent you from pushing yourself as far as you possibly can to take physical responsibility for as much as you possibly can. And so I always say, like, you know, is everybody going to be part of the new 1% and change the system at the higher level? Obviously not, because you only need 1%. But I don't know who they are. I don't know if they are or are not. And I don't know who, if I say, well, you don't have to do it, maybe that's a person who could have, right? So my responsibility is not to determine for somebody else if they can or can't do it, is to say it needs to be done. Don't accept any weakness or limitation. And so you ultimately decide whether you'll be a part of it or not. But that doesn't change what I'm going to say. And in my purpose, it's like, the thing is, I don't care about how you feel. I don't care about your opinions. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is changing the system. And you might say, well, that seems a bit ruthless. That seems a bit callous. You seem like you don't really care about people. I don't care about how people feel. In that context, I don't. I care about every child having a proper education so they can feel good all the time, because they can be an equal in this reality. I care about that. I don't care about how you personally feel about feeling safe and secure by benefiting from a system based on inequality. No, I don't care about that, because your feelings of security and feeling good and your opinions about yourself are all based on an illusion. So I don't care about things that aren't real. And I'm speaking for myself. So when you look at the context of, okay, I'm going to embrace myself, that would imply I'm embracing everything in this world. And so, as Bernard said in that video, when I change the world, I'm changing myself. So I highly suggest you consider this point. It's not about, oh, I'm just going to change myself, and if I don't get angry, or if someone says something and I don't react, then suddenly everything in the world's going to change. Well, no, those are important things to work on and to walk through and to transcend, because they're going to serve you in many ways of being an effective person in this world and supporting other people. But what are you measuring yourself by is the real question. And so if you say, well, all I need to focus on is my little world, and I'm just going to go to work and I'm just going to be a person who just doesn't get angry and all these points, okay, you can do those things, but what are you still accepting? You see, are you taking full responsibility for everything? And the point is, I know that there's many people in this world who cannot take that level of responsibility for everything. Like, for example, this child, this hypothetical child that is starving. They are not going to be able to do that. So I'm not going to demand of them, but at the same time, if I met them, I would support them in order to educate themselves, stand up, do what they can. But I also am understanding I'm in the position to take more responsibility. So if you've been studying Destiny, for example, if you've been doing your techno tutor, if you've been doing Jinn and all these, and I mean, really need to do all of them. But if you've been doing any one of these, then the point is integrating the three so that, as we explained in our last podcast, episode 49, which I don't remember what it was called at the moment, but it's episode 49. As we explained in there, it's those three together, right? It's about building your vocabulary, your understanding, walking within principles, and understanding that we can change the system. And then with Jinn, developing the skills and the understanding and the networks and the discipline to actually become equal to the system and change it. If you are aware of all of these things, because here's the thing, if you can't understand it, you're not really responsible, are you? You can't take responsibility. So some will actively resist understanding it because they're afraid of that responsibility. It's not a valid excuse. But all I can do in that case is to support by explaining more, persuading more, and so forth, right? And one of the things you're going to have to walk through if you're going to be one of the ones who decides to really stand up and change everything, which is really to change yourself. Like, if you're aware of these points at any level and you decide, well, you can't change the system. Okay, it's okay if you're like, I can see clearly within myself that I'm only going to get this far within changing things in this world or changing things within myself, and I'm going to push myself 100% all the way until the day I die, fine. But if you're saying, well, no, you can't change the system, just don't even try. No, you're a liar and a deceiver and a manipulator, and you're just trying to protect the system, and you're protecting your own self-interest. I don't care if you're Bill Gates, I don't care if you're Donald Trump, I don't care if you're Joe Biden, I don't care who you are, and I don't care if you're the homeless person on the street, right? But the homeless person on the street is going to have less ability, potentially today anyways, to take some responsibility in that picture, right? But if you're going to attack and try to diminish those who are going to stand up and take responsibility, that is unacceptable. That's actually just a way of trying to justify your own cynicism and it's like trying to manipulate others to not stand up so that you can feel good about not standing up. And that's not acceptable. So here's the key point. Embracing yourself means to educate yourself on everything in this world and to accept all of that as you, to take responsibility for all of it as yourself. And therefore, changing that is changing you. Persuading another person, selling another person, manipulating another person, however you want to call it, is selling yourself, because every person, like, you are me in another life. So if I'm selling another person, I'm selling myself. That's me. This reality is me. This reality is you. We are all one. We are all equal. And so to say like, well, you're not going to get it. You haven't been doing it. You're not going to get it. No, it's my responsibility to support you to get it. It's your responsibility to support someone else to get it. And part of that getting it is changing the systems that alleviate the survival pressure over the vast, vast, vast majority of humanity. You can't put the responsibility on everybody else when they don't even know a fraction of what you know at this point. It's your responsibility. And through that, you support others to educate themselves and stand up and move into positions of responsibility in the system and change the education system, the economic system, the political system, and so forth. Because the consequence of not doing that, I mean, you're going to have to face yourself. Whether you face yourself now and you're honest now and you take responsibility now, or whether you face yourself later, the only difference is where there's going to be more consequence that you're going to have to consider and face within shame and regret. So for me, when I face myself, I want to face myself as an equal to reality. And that's something we have to do in every single moment. Every moment that we delay that point, we're just creating more consequence for ourselves, more shame, more regret. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So instead of considering it as, oh, well, I'm changing myself and it's just gonna, someday things will change. I mean, I can't predict that. No. Take responsibility for everything in your environment. Everything. If you're judging a politician, go become a politician. Take responsibility. If you're judging millionaires and billionaires, go become a millionaire or a billionaire. Take responsibility. Embrace that. Become that. Take responsibility. Walk within the principles and do it in the way that you would do it if you were in that position with principles. That's your responsibility. Anything less than that is completely and totally and utterly unacceptable. And anybody who disagrees with that is someone who just is wanting to avoid self-responsibility because they're afraid, they're angry, they're blaming, and at the end of the day, they're not processing why they're here and how this reality works and how to change it. They're just stupid and afraid. You can cure yourself of that stupidity. We've already explained the tools to use for that. All you have to do is embrace it and do it and allow yourself to build the discipline required and to walk through your fears, because on the other side of those fears is everything that you and everyone else, including myself, wants, which is heaven on earth. It's the only way. You just have to decide to be a part of it.